Well, hey, Scott and Marshall coming at you. Valid answer. Welcome. Glad to be here with you guys on a Sunday night. We're here every Sunday night at 5. Come, hell or high water, because here I am. Got a tickle. I got a sneeze.
You look like I'm making you cry.
Yeah, you look like I'm, and it's just, I don't know if I've never had allergies before. Somebody's telling me maybe it's allergies, but I keep feeling like I got a sneeze, and it's making just the one eye, just this one eye is watering. And so it's just really embarrassing to be going out live on the radio like this. But, we're going to make it happen. We're going to push through. The show must go on. So the show is going on. I just might be sneezing quite a bit away from my microphone. So, socialist, atheist,
socialist, liberal atheist.
Socialist, liberal atheist Marshall, tell us what's going on today. Tell the capitalist conservative pastor and everybody listening what's going on today as I try to.
Well, Scott wants to talk about
I'm crying because I'm losing.
Fundamental human nature. Are humans fundamentally or basically good or bad? He's using the word selfish a lot. He's saying humans are selfish. I kind of agree. Humans can be pretty darn selfish.
Well, this stems from if you guys follow on Facebook with us, which we encourage you to do. Find us, friend us on Facebook and stuff like that. But it stemmed from a post that you put on by someone who had said basically, why do people keep saying that humans are what was it, evil by nature or selfish by nature, or whatever, when we form societies and do all this stuff and everything. I'm like, no, humans are selfish by nature, and that's and then we went online and kind of went back and forth on this, that human beings are inherently selfish, that we're social only by necessity. We have to, so we do it. But if left on our own, our motivations are all selfish. They're not societal as a whole. We don't operate as human beings out of what is best for all of society. We operate as human beings out of what is best for me. And that's what I'm trying to get, that we are inherently selfish, and we will always be looking out for ourselves. And a social society and a community is a byproduct of necessity, not something that we naturally do. We have to fight our selfish urge to be social.
I totally disagree with that. That's
what
crazy.
A shock,
right? I do agree that there is a lot of selfishness in our behavior, naturally, down to our very genes, down to our very DNA. There is a selfish aspect to our nature, because if there weren't, we wouldn't survive. Well, there are times when we have to be selfish, when we have to feed ourselves first, where we do things primarily for ourselves. So my first question to you, is selfish bad?
As a Christian, yes. As a Christian, it is a sin to be selfish. So, but that's part of our sin nature and why we need God to forgive us, so that we fight against our sin nature to think of others first. So, as a Christian, yes, I believe selfishness is bad.
Do you think that selfishness can be constructive?
Well, yes, in a society, you can use the selfishness of human beings. This is why we're talking about. This is why I feel like this is an important thing to society. As long as we understand it, you can, to use the phrase, you can capitalize on people's selfishness. That's what capitalism does. It capitalizes on the selfishness of people to create a working society. Right. Because it knows and understands, capitalism knows and understands that human beings are selfish and will make selfish decisions. That is an economic order that takes advantage of that instead of fighting against it.
Why do people get up in the morning and go to work? Because they want to make money. And why do they do that? Because they want, nice things.
Because they want to make their own decisions.
Well, I think
they want their freedom. That's ultimately that's what we want. We want our freedom. We want the power to make our own decisions.
Well, we call it freedom here. I don't know that it's really freedom if it costs money, but okay. But I've heard John Stossel. He's a libertarian commentator, pretty big in the 90s.
He would be insulted right now if he didn't think he was pretty big right now.
I don't know. Is he?
What do you mean? Even in the 90s?
Is he still on the air?
He doesn't even have a TV show, as far as I know. I think he's like a guest on other people's stuff.
Yeah. But he said greed is good. He had a whole little segment called "Greed is Good," and you can probably look it up and watch it.
Wasn't that Gordon Gekko?
No. Well, Gordon Gekko, I think, may have coined the phrase.
Yeah.
But John Stossel did the episode where he talked about it, how greed is good, why it's a good thing. because it motivates people to create value for others. And if we didn't have greed, then people would be far less inclined to create value for others, and then society would have much less value in it.
Yep.
So that's John Stossel's take. Is selfish bad? It's kind of mixed, right? I think it's really contextual, just like everything. Plus, we really don't have
everything is gray. There is no black and white.
We really don't have a working
atheist.
definition of good and bad here for the purposes of this discussion. Everything, though, is really contextual. There are times when it's probably good to be selfish, and other times when it's really horrible to be selfish. And again, context matters. But I do disagree that humans are actually, somehow fundamentally bad. On the contrary, I would argue that humans are naturally creative, naturally productive, and naturally cooperative. This is hardwired into our DNA because we are
You never raised a 2-year-old?
I've raised 2 of them.
Exactly. So you should know better you should know that statement is absolutely false. That their nature without any training is selfish. Their nature is for themselves. That's the only understanding that they have.
No. How many times has a 2-year-old brought something to you and tried to feed it to you? Or brought you a toy to offer to you to play with, for you to play with? Here, mommy, daddy, this is for you. 2-year-olds
Because they've seen
do this.
you do that.
Okay, well, and why do I do it if I'm fundamentally selfish?
Because you're trying to teach them.
Well, maybe. But
again, we're trying to do the right thing, but it's against our nature.
Even 2-year-olds are fundamentally creative. I mean, look at what they do with crayons in your walls or your table or any other surface where crayons really should not be.
Because they don't care, because that's what they want to do, because they're selfish.
Well, they don't have the understanding, but they
have the understanding of
creative.
Self. But that's what I'm saying. Their only understanding is me, my world, my universe. Everything revolves around me. That's the only thought they have as a human being. Other people, the thought of caring for other people and looking out for other people has to be taught to them.
All right, let's talk about how I know you're wrong.
Okay.
You're wrong. Yale University did a study using babies. And, babies, you're limited in what you can do with a baby, but they were able to work out some experiments. They basically put on puppet shows for babies, and then they created a way for the baby to choose which character in the puppet show to help. And in the show, one character is trying to do something, and another character is trying to hinder what the character is trying to do.
Yep.
So you basically have an adversarial relationship. One trying to go up, one trying to block the other character. And in about 2/3 of the cases, the babies attempted, in their own little baby language or way, if you will, to help the character, and they were repulsed by the one that was opposing the one trying to do whatever it was trying to do in the experiment. Now, I've got the link here, and you can read the whole detail of the experiment and all of that.
Put the link in there.
I will do that, okay? But basically, it's actually a famous study. I've heard of it before. And you can probably you can just Google it if you don't want to wait for me. Google the Yale Baby Morality Study. And what they found, while it doesn't really settle anything, they prefer helping motivations over hindering ones, was sort of a big thing. What happened next tells us even more about human nature. After the show, the infants were given the choice of reaching for either the helping or hindering shape. It turned out they were much more likely to reach for the helper. So they understand motivations and things like that. They understand a little bit more than we think. And so the end result is the fundamental nature of a baby who has not been socialized by society or really, influenced by parents. They don't even have language yet.
Yeah.
Is to help. And then when you look at civilization in general,
that can be applied to. There's no other answer for that, but that can be applied to that. They can help. That's the conclusion of that study by choosing which shape.
They prefer to help rather than hinder. They want to help. They have a natural inclination.
So it's making the assumption that they understand the idea of I'm choosing this one because I'm choosing the one who is the helper.
Correct.
There is that cognitive. You're saying that there is that
they're making a choice to help the helper. If it were split 50-50, or whatever, we might say they really don't know what they're doing. But there's a substantial number of the children, 2/3, are choosing to help the helper rather than the hinderer. So
that's a reach.
I don't think so, but
That's
I mean,
a
it's
reach.
study. It's a study, right?
Yeah.
And the idea behind
One.
the study is to try to see, is there something hardwired into our basic human nature at birth to either be constructive and helpful or destructive and selfish or what have you. And in this case, it seems to be helpful.
But see, I think a better study would be studying what babies are doing. What do babies do? Like Steve talks. Welcome back, Steve. He hasn't been with us for a little bit. Yeah, a baby will take a bottle away from another baby if they don't have one. That's what they do. They take away. They take toys away. They take things away.
Where's the study, though? I've given you a scientific study here. And now you're throwing some anecdote about, well, a baby will do this.
Because
is that really true?
Yes.
I don't know that that's true.
Yes, that is true. My wife works in the
research?
My wife works in the nursery at our church for the past 15, 20 years. And it is the struggle of every nursery worker to keep the kids from biting each other. That's their nature, is to take. Yeah, that kid has this. They try to take it back. They bite each other. That's the nature of babies. That's the nature that they are fighting all the time.
Not a scientific study.
Neither is that.
Well, no, I would imagine Yale's probably getting it right, more right than in a
they're not. But they're reaching so far to try to say, look at what they're choosing. No, look at what they do. Look at what babies do.
Well,
not
they
trying
are
to
doing
extract.
in
Not
this experiment.
what they're extrapolating from what the babies are watching. That's a reach.
Okay,
that's a
so
reach. That's
if you
one.
prefer-
That's one study compared to every parent in the history of the earth.
Okay,
One study compared to every parent in the history of the earth.
No, I'm sorry. You cannot
Every
dismiss
baby in the history of the earth.
scientific psychological evidence with an anecdote about a preschool. It's not going to work. Okay, I'm sorry. It doesn't outweigh the
It's
science
common
outweighs.
sense, human nature. Everybody has seen
Well,
it, and you've got
there you
one
go.
study with a bias and one study with an objective. Studying what they
wait a
feel,
minute. Who has the bias here?
studying what they think the babies are thinking, not
Okay.
studying what they're doing.
Look, scientific studies are peer-reviewed to eliminate bias. I mean, that's the entire exercise of science, is to eliminate bias and to filter out all of those other variables to get down to a pretty solid conclusion, usually on one single issue or question, one topic.
Yes, but it's hard enough to, again,
And you're telling me
we've
that
talked about this
because
before.
preschool exists somehow.
No, we've talked about this before. The scientific method in studying human sociology is flawed already because it's simply based on extrapolation. It's simply based on the way you ask the question, how that person is observing what they're doing. It's not literally here's this many grams of this chemical, this many grams of this chemical, and you always get this reaction. The human beings, there's so much of a wide margin of error in studying sociology. Then you add into you're trying to study the sociology of a being that has no real understanding or conscience, and you're trying to extrapolate what you think that they're doing.
Trying to find out what their fundamental nature is.
Yeah.
If it's helpful or hindering.
Right. But
And they found it's helpful. I'm sorry. It's helpful. That period. It's over. The discussion is over.
No, the
until
discussion
you
is
have
not
a
over.
scientific study to overturn the results.
did you look for a scientific study
That is a
No,
scientific
did you look
study.
for
It's
any other
from
one? You
Yale.
stopped at that one. Did you look for any more? You only found the one that agreed
It's a
with you.
landmark study. It's the ultimate landmark study on this very question. So it's not my job to do your homework for you. If there's a retraction out there or a study that argues on the opposite side, go ahead and put it in the links.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll take a look at that. But again, one study trying to extrapolate what they think babies are thinking compared to the history of every child on earth and common sense.
Let's talk
I will
about
go on
that.
that.
Let's talk about history, since you bring up history.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the thing. Here's how I know that I'm correct if you just want to take the common sense approach. And it's like this. Civilization cannot exist unless there is some sort of cooperation, production, and creativity taking place.
Yes.
The fact that civilization exists, therefore, supports the idea that humans are naturally this way. When you look at human evolution, we are a tribal species.
And
we evolved as a tribe.
Yes, and tribes do what? They
work-
war against each other.
No.
Yes.
Tribe at a fundamental level is a cooperative group. That's the definition
except for
of a tribe.
outside
That's
the
a
group.
tribe. Okay, outgroups are different, but outgroups might not even be present. Your tribe could be isolated. It could be entirely on its own. The whole purpose of a tribe, again, is cooperation.
Right.
So
Force
we
cooperation. You
evolved.
have to force human beings to cooperate.
No.
Yes, that's
nobody's
why
being
rules.
forced. You can leave the tribe. You can walk off
right,
into the
exactly,
plains
and that's fine. Or you follow
not
our
come
rules,
back.
and then and now you're no longer social. Mm-hmm. If you want to be social, you have to follow these rules against your nature.
No,
rules,
not necessarily.
Yes.
It is our nature to have these rules. We are naturally social. You take any group of human beings, any group.
They are
I don't
social
care
because they
if
have
they are
to be.
Two people or 50 people or 100 or 1,000,000, and you put them together, even if they have
They
no prior
will
contact,
fight.
they will work out a society for themselves.
They will fight, and
They will build a society.
they will selfishly fight to get what they can, and that society will be built and will constantly be in some sort of phase of struggle of this person wanting to follow this rules. This was now there has to be correction. You have to have police. You have to have the very fact that you have to have laws and police show that cooperation is forced.
But
the very
none of these
existence
things would be possible.
The very existence of rules in a society shows that people have to be forced to be social.
And yet we follow these rules.
Yeah, we do.
With frankly, a modicum of pressure.
Right.
You know?
But there is the
it
pressure.
It doesn't take that much pressure. Well, I'm sorry, but that's just how things work.
That's not
There are natural pressures that exist.
Right, but there are also natural social societies that don't exist with rules. To
Where?
Insects.
Insects?
Yeah.
How do you know whether or not insects have any kind of rules? I mean, have you ever seen a beehive or an ant colony?
Yes, exactly.
They even communicate.
They work together. Maybe they communicate, but they work together. It is their nature to work together. They swarm together. One adversary comes in, they throw themselves at that adversary with no loss to themselves. They simply go in and swarm against the adversary. They work together. They're by nature they do that. Human beings don't. An adversary shows up. An adversary shows up. You look at any mass shooting. Adversary shows up. That adversary can be subdued in seconds if everybody just swarmed them. But they don't. They scatter because they're selfish.
Well, no, they scatter because the brainstem takes over, and they aren't able to.
Exactly, and
they haven't
because it's their nature.
Or drilled that behavior to overcome
because
that.
It's their nature to run, whereas ants, their nature is to swarm and attack.
You have a natural fight or flight response, and there are those individuals who will fight.
There are some, but they're the exception. That's why they are the exception and not the norm.
Power differential there, don't you think? When a person has, a firearm versus a person who's armed with nothing.
But the nature, exactly. So you have this big old giant whatever insect coming in, the ants this small. They don't care. Their nature is to swarm and attack for the society.
They're not human beings, okay?
Right? But I'm saying I don't know what you're trying to prove. What I'm trying to say is human nature. Human beings are naturally selfish and do not react in that social way unless they are forced to.
Human beings are intelligent, and they understand that when you are faced with a threat that you cannot possibly overcome on your own, it's usually better to run. It's instinct. It's human instinct. That doesn't mean
because a deer doesn't have that. It doesn't have that intellect. But a deer will run. A deer will either hide or run. Other animals run.
I don't want to talk about animals. This is the ultimate red herring argument.
No, it's nature. I'm getting to the very fabric of nature.
It's literally a red herring argument.
I'm getting to the fabric of nature. What is the nature of this animal? The nature of this animal is selfish. The nature of this animal is social. The nature of this animal, we are an animal that is naturally selfish. Maybe it's because of our intellect. But our nature is to take care of ourselves, not to take care of others. We need laws and rules to govern us, to force us to look out for others. We don't naturally do that. The very fact that we look at people who do that in any sort of way, in a good light, look at that person, look at what they're doing. It's because they're doing something good. You don't know what good is unless there's bad. You cannot define good. If everybody is the same, you cannot say that is good because there is no point of reference of what is bad. Mm-hmm. So when you say that's a good person who's doing that, you are pointing out that they are an exception to the people who are bad. You don't know what light is without darkness. You don't know what darkness is without light.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you there.
You have to have that.
There is certainly a wide variability in human beings. But human beings, if we're going to generalize,
are generally selfish.
Have evolved as tribes. They wouldn't have evolved as tribes unless they were inherently social. Period. We wouldn't have any kind of civilization. Our ancestors would have scattered out on the plains of Africa, all living independently, more or less as hermits.
But
coming together
again,
perhaps
it's
to procreate
necessity.
And probably going extinct
Necessity
as a
is not nature. Necessity is not nature.
Yeah, well, sure it is.
No.
Necessity exists in nature.
No, but what I'm saying is when you have to do something because it's necessary, doesn't necessarily mean it's because if we crashed in a plane up in the Alps and one of us was dying and we had to eat the other person, is that natural?
Well, it's either let me think this through. It's either that or the airline food. So yes, I'm eating you.
Right. Exactly. But what I'm saying is, because that's the necessity in that moment, does that make it your nature to eat me?
If we're both alive, I'm not going to eat you.
Right.
I'm going to starve before I eat you.
Okay, so then I die. But I'm saying
then I might have a sandwich.
But I'm saying, is that now in your nature to eat human beings, or did the necessity force you to do it?
Necessity forced me to do it.
That's what I'm saying. Necessity forces us to do things. It's that are against our nature. So we have to survive, and we have to interact with others. We have to find a way. I have to find a way to please you so I can get from you what I want. My nature is still for me. My nature is not to make you better. My nature is to make me better. So I will cooperate and go against my nature in order to do something for you so that I can get something for me. That's how society works with human beings. It's not natural for us to serve other people. It's natural for us to get what we want. And when we have to, we will. Now, if it gets to the point where I don't have to give you anything to get what I want from you, that's what I'll do. If I end up with more power than you, I'll just take from you. That's human nature.
There are people who will do that.
Yes, that's human nature.
I don't think I'm necessarily one of those people.
You haven't been in that situation.
Maybe not.
But that's what I'm saying. The human nature that you are so good at working against because you are a good person. But because I'm calling you that you are a good person, is because it is against your nature. You act against your nature in a lot of things to help others, but that's not in your nature. That's not in the nature of human beings.
So how do you explain altruism? How do you explain self-sacrifice? The person who literally takes it upon themselves to the point of death. So there's no payoff. There's no reward. How do you explain that?
Well, again, virtue is its own reward. If that is what you have set up as your virtue, then doing that virtue is still self-serving. That virtue is its reward.
So should we not give out medals of honor then? Because that person, are you going to say that this person who sacrificed themselves to save so many others did so out of for selfish reasons?
No, because they did do it. But I believe
But according to your hypothesis, they did it for a selfish reason.
I believe they were motivated by their, I believe the very phrase that virtue is its own reward. You believe you are getting some kind of reward by being virtuous. And that's enough. Maybe if you believe that reward is in heaven, or if you believe that reward is just feeling good, whatever it is, you stand by that in the face of your own demise to say, no, I will be virtuous. I will be this person that I have committed myself to be, and I'm going to help that person. I'm going to do this. But all of that is choice. It's not nature. It's not natural. It is working against your nature to make that choice.
Do you think our hominid ancestors, or even tribes of chimpanzees and gorillas, do you think they choose to be together? Are they making a conscious choice to troop up, or do you think they just troop up naturally?
It's an easy question to answer when you find a powerful enough one who doesn't have to troop up, and you realize when they don't have to, they won't.
And do we have an example of that?
I don't know, but I'm just saying, do you have an example? I'm just saying.
I don't know of any loner gorillas or chimpanzees out there. I don't know of any that are just off on their own because they don't have to. They naturally
they're
form
the
troops.
silverback. Everybody has to come to them, and then they challenge, and
So they have a troop around them, don't they? And here's what I'm trying to explain: it is a fact of biology. It is a fact of human evolution that we evolved as in tribal groups, troops of humans, if you will, or pre-human ancestors, troops of hominids living together on the plains of Africa, and this wouldn't be unless it was hardwired into us, because there are animals who are solitary.
It's not hardwired, it's calculated.
There are a lot of animals out there that are solitary. and they live solitary existences, and they might benefit if they did somehow pack up or troop up together. But they don't, because it's not in their nature to pack together. They are solitary creatures.
Because they don't need to. That's what I'm saying. Need is the motivation.
So is this a little bit a chicken and the egg? Is that where we're at here with this discussion?
No, what I'm getting at, the reason I'm going to this is that when you realize and accept that human beings are naturally going to be selfish, then you make decisions based on that.
Do you have any evidence to support your position?
Human life, yes. Everywhere around you. Everything you see
So you
about
don't
human
have a
beings.
scientific study, you don't have the biological record, you don't have human evolution, you don't have history and the establishment of civilization.
I have what everybody else has, and that is the eyes to see everything that has happened before.
All right, well, we'll let that go. All right, so what about...
And I have logic. Logic absolutely backs me up.
But I would argue I have logic.
Right, but your logic is failing.
No, but
Yeah.
it works great.
No, but I'm saying
And it's supported by the scientific evidence.
No, the logical basis that the argument that you're making is not logical. When
Okay,
you look,
what's
when
the
you,
fallacy?
The fallacy is that, well, the logic that you're making is from a false premise. So maybe it's the premise that's false than the logic, because you can move logically from a false premise. So yes, that is possible. That is possible to do. What
evidence do you have that my premise is false?
The logic I am using, the logic that I'm saying is that human beings are naturally going to be selfish, but by necessity have to work against their selfishness to form society. That the act of necessity that I showed you in the example of, if you had to eat my dead body, does that make it a natural thing for you? Did that act of survival make that? Are you naturally a cannibal?
Well, no.
Okay, exactly. So necessity forces you to do things outside of your nature. You're trying to make the argument that look at the evidence of everybody living together as you're saying the fact that everybody's living together is evidence that they're naturally unselfish and naturally social. And I'm saying the act of everybody being together is a necessity for survival. So these selfish beings are utilizing society because it's necessary, not are already like this. I'm pointing to we're both pointing to the same thing. You're saying this is evidence for why we're social, and I'm pointing to saying that's the necessity that has to be existence. So we work against our nature to move that. But every time, and every time I'm bringing up those examples of just because you have to do something by necessity doesn't mean it's your nature.
Okay.
We have to by necessity be social. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's our nature to be social. And everything else in all of our interactions with human beings throughout history shows that our motivations are almost exclusively selfish and not societal. It will always be for my own personal gain. And if we understand that, we can work with that instead of fighting against it. When we design our societies and design our social interaction, design our economics to work with that, when we accept it. When you don't accept it, you're constantly fighting against it, and you're constantly going to be failing.
Well, all right. I'm interested in your evidence. Okay, so let's talk about slackers. Okay? People who don't want to go to work because they are, would you say they're not doing it because they're selfish?
Josh, isn't that what evidence is?
What? What's the question?
He said evidence by repetition. Well, if you keep getting the same answer, isn't that evidence?
Well, the repetition of the result would be a form of evidence. So
slackers. Sorry,
slackers. Okay, so if a person doesn't want to go to work on Monday, okay, and yet they go anyway, do you think that's part of their human nature? Do you think it's because they're selfish, or what's your take on that?
Well, there's a lot. What do you mean? They don't want to go to work, but they do anyway. They don't want to lose their job. They're looking out for themselves. I don't want to lose my job.
Being selfish.
I don't want to lose my job. I want to keep getting money. I want to keep getting paid. The agreement that I made with my employer is to be here at this time and serve for this many hours in order for me to get paid. And I want to keep getting paid, so I'm going to do what they say.
But if because you're talking about how we craft society.
Yeah.
And so this is actually very important, because basically what I'm trying to do in the discussion right now is I'm trying to take us from this sort of philosophical chicken and egg sort of debate that we're having and bring it down into the real world in which everybody lives. How does this translate? You actually hit on it just yourself. You said that it has real world implications.
Yes.
This discussion does. And so for me, I think we have to build a society that capitalizes on people's natural creativity, productivity, and desire to cooperate.
And just on that, keep that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have that belief, you're going to build a society. And because I'm saying that your belief in human beings is wrong, your society will fail. You're building your society based on a wrong belief, a belief that I believe is evident in nature. So that's
but what else has. But the thing is I would argue that I'm already vindicated, because every society built is literally built upon this natural creativity, productivity, and cooperative that's inherent to our nature.
Not inherent, enforced.
See, that's where that's the crux of the debate.
Well, the very existence of government. Mm-hmm. The very existence of government and rules among humans is the evidence that we need that in order to cooperate, that it is not in our nature. There has to be rules laid out that we all have to agree upon. If you don't agree...
Why would we cooperate if it wasn't in our nature to cooperate?
Necessity.
Okay.
Why would you eat me?
Well, out of necessity.
Exactly.
But just because you made me say the word necessity doesn't mean that your previous argument is correct.
But that's what but no, it's the perfect example. Necessity causes us to do what's against our nature. Just because we do it doesn't mean it's in our nature.
So what's going to happen if we create a society?
What I'm trying to say is you're trying to say, look, we're doing it, therefore it's in our nature. No, just because you do something doesn't mean it's in your nature. Just because it's been done a bunch doesn't mean it's in your nature. If you've been forced to do that and you look back, you could say slavery is in our nature because we've done it before. No, it's not.
Is this why you fear a universal basic income? You actually believe that if we give everybody a universal basic income and they no longer have to work, that they will simply stop working?
No.
Do you think that that's true?
I believe that most of them will. That we'll stop working. Mm-hmm. There's no real need to participate in it, and the system will crumble upon itself because you won't have enough people paying in compared to those who are pulling out. That the human nature will cause them. Will simply fall into their human nature.
And why do you think people are naturally lazy? That they'll just stop working?
Because they're selfish.
Where's your evidence of that?
Because they're selfish.
Where's your evidence that if people have their basic needs met, they will simply stop working, become couch potatoes?
Because that's what happens.
Do you have evidence of that? Do you have any instance in recorded history where that's happened? Do you have any kind of data?
I don't have access to it right now, no.
Okay, all right. So my thing here is there are a lot of people in the status quo who don't want to get up and go to work on Mondays. And
here, read Josh's. Sorry, not Josh's. Read Steve.
I don't have it up.
Pull it up. I can't pull up the whole thing.
I don't even have my
I have Facebook running.
Facebook open.
I think I get the general direction of where you're going with it, Steve. I just can't read the whole thing.
Okay, he says if all people are good, tell a group of employees that you will pay them for 1 month, whether they are there or not.
How many will show up?
All continue to show up.
Will they?
That's a great.
No, I'm asking you. Will they?
No,
they won't.
Not in the status quo. Okay, and
why?
That's exactly the point I'm going to get to. People they're not lazy. It's not laziness. It's reluctance.
It's selfishness.
No, it's reluctance. It's different. So let's say, for example, let me ask you this. How many hours do you work in a week?
On average, somewhere between, over 40, between 40 and 60, typically.
Okay. So if you became CEO of Apple, let's say we're like, man, you're just this genius. You have the mind to do it. We want you, Scott, to become CEO of Apple. You become CEO. Do you think you'll work more or less as CEO of Apple?
I would think that in getting to that position, the work changes. The kind of work changes, and I would not be doing the same kind of work that I would be doing, and I'd be more directing other people to do the work.
You would? But would you put more hours in or less?
I don't know. It just depends. I mean, it depends on the expectation. Again, my job right now, I'm paid as a salary to get certain jobs done, not to work so many hours. And if I can get those jobs done in these few hours, then I've accomplished my job. But if it takes me this many hours to do it, then I got to take that many extra hours to do it. But my motivation is I'm being paid to get this job done. So as a CEO, if you're being paid to get a certain job done, then whatever hours you have to invest into it.
course.
And if you can lead well and lead others to do it and accomplish this goal, say, this is the goal. We got to raise revenues by, 18% over the next year. Right. And you plan that and everything. And I can go play golf and go wherever because I've got other people working on it. Then I'll do that.
Would you work more hours?
I don't know. It's gonna. That's what I'm saying.
If the job demanded it, would you work more hours?
If the job demanded, if it said, you have to put in so many hours for this.
Put 70 hours.
Okay, then that's what the job requirement is. You're going to pay me to do 70 hours, then I'll do 70 hours because that's what you're paying me to do. That's the description of the job. Okay,
so you're not lazy. You're not lazy, right?
I want to keep my job, and you're saying that the description of the job is this, so I need to do that in order to.
So the point that I want to make here is that a lot of people, when they don't show up to the job, it isn't because they are lazy. It's because they are reluctant, because the job does not offer them the benefits, the pay, the compensation, the rewards, if you will, that they want. If you give a person a job they want, you take the employee and you make them the boss or the owner. All of a sudden, that employee is transformed into a working machine because now they're working for themselves. That's why employees never work as hard as the owners.
Because they're selfish.
Right.
They are working for themselves. You're making my point. Thank you.
The difference between laziness and reluctance. And so
I'm not talking about laziness.
Here. So
I'm not talking. I've never mentioned laziness. I don't know why you're going down this thing of laziness. I've never mentioned laziness. I'm talking about selfishness. I'm talking about the motivation of self. Doesn't necessarily mean you're lazy.
I know what you're
so I don't know why you're bringing up laziness.
My point is, if we're going to craft a society that works in accord with human nature, then we need a society that addresses the issue of reluctance in the workplace. And a very easy way to do that would be to raise wages. Do things that give people a greater reward for doing what you want them to do. And suddenly that reluctance to work would diminish.
Right, exactly. You pay them more to do this job. They're going to do that job because they want more, because they're selfish.
But because they are also, they are constructive. They are productive. Human beings want to be productive. So if there were no job, if that job did not exist.
Still does not change.
If the job does not exist, they would find something else for themselves to do.
Yes, because they want gain for themselves. You're talking about
because
laziness.
They're naturally productive.
Because they're naturally selfish.
This is what retired people do. Retired people have everything, let's say. The people who are retired, they have their home, their car, their pension, everything. They don't have to work. They can literally become couch potatoes. Many of them find hobbies and other things to do because they are naturally creative and productive. And they join clubs and associations
to do what
because they're naturally cooperative.
To do what they want.
Exactly. So this is where you and I agree on the selfish side of things.
Because necessity is no longer the motivation.
Right. So when we satisfy the necessity, and people still come together to do what they want.
They will do what they want, not what society needs.
Exactly.
That's the problem. Society still needs certain things. You cannot force people to do what society needs. That's what I'm saying. So if you give them everything they want, they're going to go do what they want, which is not necessarily what society needs. So society is going to have to force them to do what society needs. Society is only going to be able to exist because it forces people to say, we know you want to do this. We've satisfied all your needs. You want to do this, but society now has these needs that need to be met. You need to meet them. It's coercion. You need to meet them.
So capitalism then is inherently coercive.
Life is inherently coercive.
Well, yeah.
Nature is inherently coercive. So it's not.
But the economic system itself is especially coercive.
The economic system uses
desperation.
Nature.
Desperation.
Uses the natural propensity of mankind. Uses the natural propensity of mankind for the benefit of mankind.
So why not alleviate that a little bit?
Because society will crumble because it will not get what it needs, and society will have to force people to accomplish what it needs. Human beings, like you said, when they retire, want to do what they want to do, are going to find like-minded people to go to their club and do. They are making their choice because there are no more needs. They are making their choice for themselves, for what they want. And if that choice doesn't fall into line with what society needs, society has to come and force them to do what society needs. Society always works out of coercion. Any society always works out of coercion because human beings are naturally selfish. They have to be coerced. Any society, in order has to have rules. If there's rules, if there's any form of government, it's because human beings are naturally selfish, and you have to have rules to coerce them to act together as a society for the benefit of society.
Okay, so maybe I need to modify my claim here that humans are naturally creative, productive, and cooperative. Maybe
Hold on.
Maybe humans
hold
are.
on. None of those are outside of saying selfish.
Exactly. So maybe I need to change that to say humans are naturally selfish, creative, productive, and cooperative.
No, they're not. They're
Cooperative and selfish seem to oppose each other,
They
but
do.
as you've explained, you can be cooperative to obtain a selfish means, a selfish end, correct?
Yes, but your motivation is still selfish. Your motivation isn't to cooperate. Your motivation is
I think
selfish.
people are inherently cooperative. You know, I think it's inherent, but I think you've also made a decent case that humans are inherently selfish, and I have no choice but to agree based on my own experience. But I would disagree with you when you discount that people are naturally creative, productive, and cooperative.
I've never discounted that. I've
Well,
never
you
discounted that.
didn't like the science, but all right. So, so how do we reconcile the selfish and the cooperative? And I guess, you know, because we're talking about engineering society.
You engineer society in such a way that you benefit from the selfishness of mankind.
Right.
So you engineer a society that rewards the selfishness.
Okay.
And then, again, it is that whole green
how much
is good.
and I get that, and that's capitalism.
Yeah.
But how far?
Because capitalism
is too
works with
far?
human nature.
How far is too far?
Well, that's something that can be argued, but I'm saying by its nature, that's the one that's going to work with human nature.
Because I think we have to alleviate that. I think we have to do something to you know, we've got to throw the slacker a bone. People wouldn't be slackers if they were getting a living wage for their work. There'd be a lot fewer slackers out there. And then, of course, you have the people at the top saying we can't possibly afford to pay people another $1 an hour.
Because they're selfish.
Right.
But not. You keep throwing the selfishness on the rich people. I'm throwing selfishness on everybody. It's a human problem. It's not a rich person.
And I agree. I understand. I'm acknowledging. But yet, you know, you look overseas where minimum wages are higher, where the profit margins are lower, where the taxes are higher. You even look back
Like
in
France.
American history. Okay. Well, France, the taxes on the people at the bottom have simply gone too high. They're simply too high. And the people at the bottom in particular can't afford it. And the people at the top have been getting too many subsidies and tax breaks. And so you now have really a populist, mostly leftist, but there's also people on the right who are literally rioting in the streets. So they'll have to make concessions to avoid revolution.
Is love also just coercion?
No. Love is entirely... I mean, it wouldn't be love if it was coercive.
I think that's...
I mean, there are people who marry because, you know, they're just trying to satisfy their needs. And I get that. There is an inherent drive, and if your needs are not satisfied in your relationship, one or both partners are likely to stray.
Yeah.
So it's all about satisfying one another's needs. But the initial first contact, the hookup, the connection, the development of the initial relationship is entirely non-coercive, or at least it should be.
Right.
Ideally, it should be two people simply choose to enter into a union with one another, and that's that.
But is it? It's a very good question, because I haven't thought about this yet, so I'm playing devil's advocate for everything right now for it. Is it just to satisfy a personal need, though?
Yeah.
You are wanting to be with that person. I know from experience. That if I do my best to look out for my wife and do what she wants, I know that's better for our marriage than looking out for myself and doing what I want. I know that our marriage will last longer. So is that it's possibly a selfish motivation that I want our marriage to last longer. Therefore, I do things for her and look out for her and do those things. And it's possible that it is, at its very basis, a selfish motivation. But I know that I'm going to act in this way for her. I believe that, and this could completely undermine everything that I've said, but there is a difference. The one difference that is in human beings is the emotional connection of love. that I believe is something that's unique to human beings is the emotional connection of love. And then when you bring in the spiritual connection as well, that I believe in the spiritual connection and God and God's love for us, that love is the one thing that helps us get past our nature. It is the thing, that is what God calls us to do, is to be beyond our nature, to go beyond our nature, to love others, it tells our husbands to love your wife as you love yourself, to go beyond and be that love and the love of God to others. I believe that it is against our sinful nature, but our love for God and our love for each other causes us to work against our nature for the benefit of all of us. But it is against our very nature to do that. That's why it's exceptional when we're good at love. It's exceptional when we're good to others. It's exceptional when we are good people helping others and doing for others, because it is so much against our nature to do that. And the exceptional should be rewarded.
I would point out that Christians did not invent marriage or relationships or civilization or society. That those things predate Christianity. They predate Judaism. I don't know if they predate religion. I'm pretty sure they do, but I can't really say because we think Neanderthal had religion.
Yeah.
They were a cousin of Homo sapiens sapiens. They're not direct. Well, some people have Neanderthal DNA. So that would kind of be my response to that. So do we need Christianity then to get us to this, to develop civilization, to develop marriage, to develop society?
I say yes.
I say no, because we have society, marriage, and relationships without Christianity. But
I think following God's law, since he's the creator and he has the owner's manual and he knows what's best for us, I believe following what he says we should do will give us the best results in our life. That's why I am who I am. That's why I'm a pastor. And that's why I teach and preach that and counsel people to follow the laws of God, because that is his instruction manual to help us fight against our nature, to be better and to bring more people to him. That's why I do what I do, because I believe our nature is sinful and our nature is bad, and we need something to help us. And God has put his laws there to show us how he wants his creation to act.
Does Christianity, though, have a monopoly on happiness and contentment and successful relationships and civilization and cooperation, etc.?
I think ultimately, yes. I think ultimately, otherwise, why would I believe what I believe?
That's a great question.
Ultimately,
you're asking the questions for me.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Ultimately, yes, I have to say that because that's the belief system that is in me, and I have to believe that is the ultimate answer that will get you the best results. And my life that I have lived according to what God has said has brought me those results. So.
Well, there you go.
There we go. So this has been a valid answer with Scott and Marshall. Great discussion.
I don't know. I mean, I agree with the selfish thing a little bit, but I don't know I don't think we agree at the end of the day.
Okay, cool. That's fair. That's what the show is all about, because we're still friends even though we disagree. Catch us on Sunday nights at 5:00, Mondays at 4.
Tomorrow.
And then we'll catch you the next time. See you guys.